If you've seen Black Panther Wakanda Forever, then you know that Namor freaking ruled.
Don't call him General or King. They called him Kukul Khan, the Feather Serpent God.
So when I saw this Dolby Cinema poster for the movie, I decided to turn it into a laser engraved, hand-painted, resin-filled, LED lit, giant shadow box to put on display in the man cave.
I'm Grant, this is Dad Crafted. Let's make some cool stuff.
That's cool. I can make that.
The first step is to create a digital file. I use an app on my iPad called Procreate. This is essentially just bringing in the original poster image and then tracing over the top of it. When I make my drawings in Procreate, every single piece that I will cut on the laser is going to be its own layer in the Procreate app. This image kind of looks like a mess at the end, but this is essentially because it's all the layers over top of each other. I then bring each image into Inkscape so they can be converted to vectors so that they can be fired on the laser. In this case, I've got one layer that's the actual engraved lines, and then I make a contour layer that will act as the cut lines, and I did some extra work that allows me to have these holes cut out inside the image. I'll link down in the description a separate video for how to do that. And then I let my Glowforge laser get to work.
Oh my, that is large. Wow. It's gonna be big.
Our Wakanda Heroes section is just a cut line, and this is going to be painted black and just rest at the bottom of the piece. To make the mask gold, I'm just rolling on a metallic gold acrylic paint. The first round of feathers I had to do are all just cut lines, but these holes will all be filled with resin eventually. And I should note, all the things that I do here in Inkscape, I am using a template that I created that is the same size as the Glowforge bed, so that all my resizing is done here and not in the Glowforge UI. The second round of feathers end up going behind the whole mask, and just like the mask, they'll be engraved and cut. I coat all these feathers with a dark teal, and then I hand painted some lighter teal feathering strokes on to make them, look like feathers. Then it was time to just do a dry layout of everything and see how we were looking. And Namor is looking good.
They called him Kukul Khan.
Then it was time to prep for resin. So I cut out all the gold feather pieces with acrylic, just using the cut lines and not all the interior cut lines. Then I glued all those pieces onto the backs of the gold feathers so that I could easily fill them all with resin. Just to be safe, I put some painter's tape around all the edges so that any resin wouldn't leak out. I cut some smaller pieces to put on the back of the mask since I didn't really need to cover the whole mask. And then I got to mixing resin. So that wraps up the mask of Namor.
They called him Kukul Khan.
With all the smaller pieces done, it was now time to figure out how to make the shadow box and how big it should be.
So after laying everything out on the table, now I think I know how big everything needs to be to make the shadow box frame. So I drew out all my measurements, the interior shape, the size of the face frame, the size of the overhang, the size of the actual box itself, exterior and interior, with it being 1 3/4 inches deep. And then the interior size here will lead to the backer that will be 19 by 27. Alright, let's cut all that.
For the box, I just used some scrap plywood I had laying around that was already 1 3/4 inches thick. I just used some butt joints and screwed everything together because it's all getting painted later anyway. And I routed out some edges for a backer that was made of MDF to fit in the back. My original thought for this backer was, I'll just prime and paint everything. I mixed a couple of colors together to get this teal look, thought it kind of looked like water, painted it on. I didn't really like it, but the frame was spray painted black, and that's staying. So since this is already a resin project, why not add a bunch more? Let's fill the whole thing with resin.
I'm going to go with deep blue sea and a midnight blue and a little bit of the ghost blue pearl for some depth.
Now I'm no pro when it comes to resin. I used MAS Art Pro resin, and apparently they have a calculator on their website, and I should have used that, because right in the middle of this pour I realized I didn't have enough, and I had to mix a whole other batch and hope that the color matched.
Need the heat gun. Gotta get rid of these bubbles.
I definitely learned not to be shy with the heat here. On this first round I was too far away and not eliminating enough of the bubbles. Yowza. It's much darker than the video. So eventually I realized that all those little white swirls were actually more bubbles, so I went back to the torch and eliminated all of them. And then I had to redo all my little swirly things again.
That's what we used, guys.
Then it was time to make the outer frame that was going to rest on top of the shadow box and overlap it. Nothing special here, just making a frame, spray painting it black. When the resin was fully cured, it was time to lay everything out and see this thing start to take shape. Then it was just a matter of gluing everything down one layer at a time and praying you didn't screw this thing up.
So that's laid out, and I think I'm going to cut little spacers to raise these up, so these will get a spacer on the bottom and maybe one little one in the middle, just so they can get these off the ground. Same here, and then these side pieces will get spaced up another notch, and then him. Oh wait, then and him, and then him, and then that. Sure.
I'd just like to say, glue-ups are stressful. I put this off like 2 weeks just because I was so scared I was going to screw this up.
Whew, round 2 done. Let's test some lights.
If you haven't yet realized that I've been winging this entire project, I'm really winging it here with these lights. So if you remember the original poster of Namor...
They called him Kukulkan.
Yeah, M'Baku, we get it. But that poster had that light shining up from behind the heroes right on the front of the mask, and I really wanted to try and replicate that.
Too hard to tell. What if we run it up behind?
So I just didn't like the look as much with the lights shining just from the bottom. So I decided to try and run behind the mask so that really the light could come up from behind the resin-filled areas and make those kind of glow more. And after putting everything in place without glue, things are looking good.
Alright, I'm scared, but I'm going for it.
So I got to peeling the adhesive strips off the back of the lights and put them all in place. And then I went ahead and drilled a hole through the bottom right corner of the sign. No big deal, because this is all going to be covered up by the outer frame later. Then I used hot glue to finally attach Namor's mask to the sign. I ended up gluing a piece of foil to the back of the heroes, hoping that that would reflect some of the light more onto the mask. Then it was time to attach the front frame, so I pre-drilled holes through the back of the frame and laid everything in place, and then just used screws to screw in from the back to attach it. Hot glue failed me once on this, so I ended up using epoxy to attach the heroes inside that front frame. To hang it, I originally chose to just use a piece of wire across the back, but that didn't really work so well. I quickly realized that my power cords were too bulky, so the frame couldn't sit flat against the wall and would just wobble back and forth.
That's not gonna work. Poop.
So I pivoted to option B, the French cleat. That kind of acts as a 3/4 inch spacer away from the wall and gives us room to have our power cords sit without being an interference. And just like that, we are done, and it's time to turn off the lights and let this thing illuminate the room. Well gang, I'm pretty proud of this one. If you enjoyed this video, and you like Marvel, be sure to check out my Marvel corner box art video, or check out this other playlist that we've got queued up. Thanks so much for watching. See you on the next one.